One of the things I wanted to talk about today was your experience with ear infections, and particularly canine repeat ear infections. I'm going to ask your opinion in a second, because you were telling me the story of when you were treating bacterial ear infections with antimicrobials, antibiotics, and so on. Can you just tell me again what your experience was with that?
We've had quite a number of cases over the recent years where we've had these patients with just recurrent ear problems that we just cannot get rid of, we cannot shake. But the very first one, which kind of drew my attention to the whole question of the use of probiotics in this kind of veterinary medical environment, was a 5-year-old Newfoundland, big dog, 60 kilos of dog, big, fluffy, hair all over him, including in his ears. And he'd got to the ripe old age of 5 with no ear problems at all. But he then developed this ear infection. At the time, he was a patient of one of my younger colleagues. And on reflection, she did a very good job. You know, she took an ear swab right at the first instance when he was first presented to her. She had that analyzed, decided what type of bacteria it was based on the results of that sample, selected an antibiotic, topical ear antibiotic to use. He was treated for a couple of weeks with this antibiotic that she prescribed. A couple of weeks later, represents same kind of problem, sees my colleague again. She takes another swab. She sends it off to an external laboratory for culture and sensitivity. So this time round, not only do we know what bacteria they are, but also what they are sensitive to in terms of antibiotics. So she selects a different type of antibiotic, treats him with it for 2 weeks, asks them to bring him back, which they do faithfully. All looks fabulous, fantastic. She discharges him. 2 weeks later, he represents.
That quickly, huh?
Yeah, it was that quickly. Anyway, she and this patient of ours went round and round 2 or 3 more times. Same thing, the same process, but each time the lab reported a different pathogenic bacteria. So therefore, she selected a different antibiotic based on the culture and sensitivity results. At that point, my colleague approaches me and says, "Okay, I've got this real problem. This dog is just getting recurrent ear infections. I've treated him absolutely according to the book, and I can't shake the problem. The problem is that each time he comes back with a different bacteria, that's a different pathogenic bacteria that's causing the problem." So we obviously, in this situation, we had to come up with a different solution, and so together we thought, well, let's try the probiotic approach, as we had pretty well tried every other approach. And anyway, so he was treated with topical probiotics, and we asked him to come back in 2 weeks' time. He did. The problem was 90% resolved, so we continued for another couple of weeks, had him back again, and by that stage he was 100%, ear infection completely gone. But this had been the situation 2 weeks after each one of his prior treatments. So we asked him to come back 2 weeks later with having had no further treatment, and his ears were absolutely perfect. He's had a number of subsequent visits, and at each one of those we've been able to confirm that there's no further infection. He's had no further treatment, not even maintenance probiotics, and he's essentially cured. So for this particular dog, this was a completely different approach to the conventional medical approach to these kind of problems, and ultimately at the end of the day we got a cure, which is obviously in everyone's best interest, not least of which was his. Chronic ear infections can't be a very pleasant thing to have to suffer. So
plus getting all those antimicrobials or antibiotics time and time again can't be good for the overall.
Yeah, and I think, for me, this was really quite an eye-opening case, because it got me really thinking about, what actually was going on in this particular dog's case. I've said to you before that, I like to think of my patients not only as a dog or a cat that I can see and I can palpate and I can examine and I can take their temperature and so on and so forth. I prefer to see them as a complex ecosystem. So when I see a dog walking through my door, my consulting room door, I see an ecosystem consisting of, yes, a dog, but around this dog is 20 trillion microbes, mostly bacteria, but it's a whole ecosystem. So applying that kind of thinking to this particular dog's case, you have to kind of start thinking about it and talking about it in different terms. But in those terms, the question really should have been, what is the problem with the microbiome of this dog's ears that have caused this problem to occur? And the knee-jerk reaction, and it is a knee-jerk reaction because that's been our culture for several hundred years, the germ theory idea and culture to everything we taught about at university and how we are marketed to by pharmaceutical companies peddling antibiotics. The knee-jerk reaction is there's a pathogen in amongst these bacteria, kill off the pathogen. But it's very short-sighted because actually in terms of the total number of bacteria on this dog and particularly in his ears, the number of pathogens is relatively small.
So you're killing all the microbiome just to...
So we are going in,
assassinate them.
we're identifying one pathogen, and we're completely wiping out the trillions of other bacteria, friendly bacteria that should be in there, that are actually fighting the good fight or should be fighting the good fight against this one pathogen. So we've actually created a huge problem unwittingly. In the first instance, you could say, yes, the first course of antibiotics, we were able to get rid of the first pathogen. But then the second pathogen came along, different antibiotic, third pathogen. And what gave the second and third and subsequent pathogens the opportunity to establish themselves in this dog's ear was the very fact that we had unwittingly wiped out all that dog's natural bacterial flora.
Natural defense, natural competition for the
completely.
The pathogen,
So we were saying effectively to any pathogen that happened to be passing this dog's path, come in here. We've got a perfect environment. So make yourself at home.
Come in. There's warmth. There's food. Come in here, and there's no competition.
And that is the microenvironment of a dog's ear is warm. It's moist. There is some organic material there, so natural wax production, which is 100% normal. But bacteria love that. That's a perfect microenvironment for infection. So the question then is, so why do more dogs not get ear infections? Because if this is the perfect microenvironment for a pathogen, why don't we see more ear infections? And the reason is very simple. It's because there are trillions of friendly bacteria standing there saying to these pathogens, all right, bring it on. They are a biofilm of defense against the bacteria. So this is why our eventual strategy worked quite well, because once we had cleared the infection, we repopulated that dog's ears with commensal bacteria. And what I mean by that is bacteria that are friendly bacteria that aren't going to cause any harm and are bacteria which you would find naturally in the environment. So we created this biofilm of friendly bacteria, helping to re-establish what should have been there in the first place, and what had been there for the first 5 years of this dog's life. Problem solved.
Wow. Because this is something we get asked about this quite a lot, and it's very interesting in what you say there in your choice of words, because the LUCAA product, probiotic product, isn't a medical device. It's not a medical product. And we don't provide, we don't cure. Simply what's happened here is that we've managed to give an alternative to what was causing the repeat infections.
Yeah.
So we haven't cured, we just stopped.
Yeah.
Stopped the bad thing happening, if you like, or avoided a situation in a natural way. And this thing which got me at the time when you told me this, and we heard it subsequently very often, this repeat thing, this poor dog having repeat ear infections, and the cure, if you like, causing the repeatness of it all, you know.
And I tell you, Joe, this is a huge planetary global problem, and that is the problem of antimicrobial resistance, because of germ theory from the mid to late 1800s. Mankind has been focused on the wrong problem. Let's not beat around the bush. The identification and focus on some of the badass pathogens like smallpox, like cholera, like TB, like the plague, polio. These were killers for sure, and mankind needed to figure out what was causing this, and then develop mechanisms to combat these infections. No question or qualm about that. But the pendulum has completely swung the other way now, and what we've done, without modifying our appreciation of actually what's going on a microbiome perspective, not only for you, me, and the pets that we deal with, but the planetary microbiome, is we've created all manner of horrendous crimes against the microbiome. We've effectively wiped out lots of normal, healthy bacteria, both on ourselves, on our pets, on and in our pets' bodies, but also from a planetary point of view.
Yeah.
So we've swept away a whole lot of really good, useful, very important to good health bacteria, and we've left open the playground for pathogens to come in, and we've hit them with antibiotic wave after antibiotic wave after antibiotic wave. And of course what's happened is that over time they've adapted to that and developed stronger mechanisms to counteract the antibiotics we use. And that's the nature of bacteria. That's what they do. They mutate very quickly. They are incredibly adaptive. So now in 2022-23, we are faced with a global problem that there are some really, really nasty pathogenic bacteria out there that we have no defenses against.
And it's a two-pronged problem, because where you've been wiping out, as a species, we've been wiping out good bacteria. We've been doing that with chemicals, which are also building up.
Yeah.
When you zoom out and look at some of the big problems we're facing, and the focus is on energy efficiency and carbon and so on, and it's right to focus on those things, but carbon's not the biggest problem when it comes to global warming. Water vapor is, and we're getting off topic a little bit, but the increased evaporation from the oceans due to the extra chemicals that are in there, and these chemicals are coming from industries, cleaning solutions and so on. But you're able to reduce the amount of, using the LUCAA probiotic strategy, you're able to reduce your use of antibiotics in your practice. So you've got one little bit where there's less antibiotics going, and when you need them, you need them, right? Thank God we have them. But you're able to reduce your use of antibiotics. Therefore, you're doing something to reduce antimicrobial resistance. And we've been talking about antimicrobial resistance for a few years now, but we've noticed a change in people's attitude. And people are realizing that this is a problem. They hear more stories of people coming out of hospital with infections that aren't reacting to antibiotics. And I think the World Health Organization says by 2050, they reckon 8.2 million people will die every year from cancer, but over 10 million will die from antimicrobial resistance. So this thing is on its way to being a bigger problem than cancer. And that's just deaths. That's not people who've suffered and eventually got over and increased cost on the NHS and so on.
From my position as a vet, so someone who's licensed to prescribe antibiotics, and being completely aware of the heinous crimes we've unwittingly committed in the use and overuse and over-reliance on antibiotics, I am completely fascinated and engaged with a way to fight pathogens, because no one's denying there are pathogens around that can do damage. But how do we fight them? That's the thing. And up to now it's been, antibiotics. Develop an antibiotic which will kill them. But it's so much neater and more effective, but a neater solution to say, okay, fine, let's recognize we do have a pathogen, and let's get good bacteria to fight the good fight. Let's overwhelm this particular pathogen with so many good bacteria who are going to compete for the same resources, because bacteria don't fight against each other. It's a war of attrition. They fight for resource. So whatever the resource happens to be, whether it's earwax or sebum from a skin or organic material in a forest somewhere, if we overwhelm the pathogen numbers-wise with good bacteria, let them fight the good fight. Let them deal with it in a way that Mother Nature intended. Let's not bring in these these really harmful chemicals and antibiotics. When I see, like, this whole pandemic has just freaked me out, because we know that it's a coronavirus. We know coronaviruses, that it's a virus. They don't respond to bacteria. What we also know is that to wipe a coronavirus off your hands, you need soap and water. What have we actually seen in the marketplace? Every place you go into, it's
hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer. This sanitizer kills 99% of known bacteria.
Then what?
Exactly.
What happens next?
It's not killing the virus. It's not killing the virus. And actually what it's doing is it's killing 99% of bacteria. What is that all about? And yet we've sailed, as a global population, we've just sailed into this travesty.
But it's known. We wrote about this here, we wrote about it in the March of the pandemic, that this was a likelihood, and we sent out some letters. And then I noticed in one of the daily newspapers in the July, they were talking about antimicrobial resistance from the hand sanitizers. Okay. And you're trying to explain to people that if you're going to sanitize your hands, you're still leaving all the food for the bacteria, but you're killing, again, back to exactly the same what happens in the ear. You're getting rid of the good bacteria, the natural defense is all gone, and now you've got a hand, and as soon as you use your hand sanitizer, as soon as you run your fingers through your hair, put your hand in your pocket, you're covered. God knows what you're covered with in terms of bacteria. So you have antimicrobial resistance, and you've got a reducing effect. We also see this in surface cleaning. And the very same thing, even though the Lancet was reporting in early as September in the pandemic that you don't get coronavirus from surfaces. So stop spraying more chemicals and causing more antimicrobial resistance and more damage to the environment. And this, even the damage to the environment, used to be a remote thing. Well, now look, we're talking about climate change. There's a link to chemicals and climate change, not just a link to chemicals and illness and death of aquatic life and so on, but actual to climate change.
I think, Joe, it's for me it's a paradigm shift. Like a paradigm shift occurred when we went from Newtonian physics to Einsteinian's theory of relativity. It was a whole different way of thinking about, what happens if if this meets that, what happens? It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
It's a whole different way of thinking about
In
this.
terms of using a probiotic instead of an antibiotic.
So I think what's required here is a complete paradigm shift, and paradigm shifts aren't easy because, well, for obvious reasons, because we have a belief system, but we need to recognize that it's just a belief system, that pathogenic bacteria require antibiotics to kill them. We need to be thinking in a different kind of a way, and in my view, realizing that actually 20 or 30% of the planet's biomass is microbial. We can't actually see it. So, but we do need to be able to metaphorically see the biome in order to appreciate that it's there and understand how it works, and most importantly, understand that it's absolutely vital to our health.
It's vital, and it surrounds us. So the big question is, when people are using an antimicrobial or an antibacterial product for whatever reason, is it what happens next? So if you're going to wipe the microbiome out of that ear, it is going to get replaced by something. If you're going to wipe the microbiome off any surface on the planet, it is going to... Are you prepared for what happens next? And this is what we do with the probiotics. We actually, we take care of what happens next, because we put what happens next. We actually put it there. So you've had great results with the ear, and we're talking specifically about the ear and everything around this global conversation we're having here. The microcosm of the ear reverberates around the rest of the planet. So if we get people to use less antimicrobials in the ear, there is a wider good implication, as well as just improving the health of the pet.
Brilliant. I think as a vet, I would have to say, we do have to recognize that there are pathogenic bacteria, not only in ears or whatever, and those do need to be dealt with, but we do need to actually ask the questions of what happens next. That's, I think, a key part of this paradigm shift.
And we'll have other conversations. We'll talk about surface cleaning and skin and so on. But for now, Richard, that's just been really, really informative and useful, and thank you very much. Look forward to the next conversation.
My pleasure.